Hey guys, welcome to this Saturday's video. I've got Orion here with me to help out. I don't know how long he's going to cooperate for because I had him outside for a little while already. And once he gets kind of exploring, he likes to do his own thing. What I wanted to talk about today was kind of using failures as, stepping stones to get to the next level. And while I don't suggest failing intentionally, obviously, to get there, we need to be willing to learn from our mistakes. And one of the things that I've always felt is important as someone that tries to help educate people is that I need to share my mistakes with others. A lot of people like to sweep that stuff under the rug, and I don't know what that really helps. People are more concerned with their own image as opposed to actually doing what helps the hobby. So some of you may have seen recently that I lost my Thai bamboo rat. He was doing fantastic. He was eating every time offered. A lot of what I had learned about that species, I just love how he looks right now, was that they need to be tease fed when they're younger and they can be tough to get to eat. He was fantastic. I never had to do anything. The moment he saw the prey item come in there on the tongs, he was ready to roll. And he was just great. He was doing great. He was growing. He was shedding nicely. He was fairly calm. He had his moments where, he didn't want to be touched or whatever, but that's pretty typical with babies of a lot of snakes. I love the fact that he's periscoping right now. So anyhow, he was doing great, but I went away for a day. Actually, the day that I went up to Nerd and shot those videos with Rob was the night that I lost him. I had him on the floor in my house, not on the bare floor. He was in a tub, obviously, but I had him on floor level, doing everything I could to keep him as cool as possible. And, I was foolish enough to think that I could keep him cool enough. My house is older. It's not insulated well. And during the summer, it gets a lot of sun and it bakes. And they can't tolerate mid 80s and up. And the room got into the mid 80s, for a while. And that spike was enough to kill him. And so I feel terrible about that because it's 100% my fault. Even though I can't control the weather and things like that. I kind of knew taking him on that I was going to have to work to keep him cool, and I thought that I could do it. And so that was a mistake on my part, and unfortunately he paid the price for it. And so, as much as I enjoyed the species and it was fun, I think for now it's not something that I could take on again. I need to wait until I move into a place where I can control the environment a little bit better. These guys, while they don't like warmer temperatures, can handle that temperature, spike once in a while. And I'm still able to keep it cool enough to where it doesn't go above that, even when it's really, really hot. But I think with the species that are that sensitive, I just can't do it until I get into a better situation. Now, also, you guys saw the baby marbles. I did lose one of the baby marble males. He ended up coming down with hard belly. Which a few people know about. I had sent some stuff out when it happened. I had tried to palpate it out and work it out of him, and I was unable to. I think mostly because I caught it too late. It's the first time I've ever seen hard belly personally in the hundreds of snakes that I've produced. I'm always very careful to make sure that I do everything that I can to prevent it. I don't think that there was anything in this case that I could have done to prevent it, but I definitely want to learn from it, and so I've reached out to some people that have dealt with it more than I have, and I'm working on learning everything I can about it. And I looked back at some of the pictures of this particular snake, and looking back, knowing now that he had it, I can kind of see where it started and that I just missed it. And I think being short tails made it a little bit tougher. In ball pythons, when you see it, it's really super obvious, but short tail babies are already thicker, and then on top of it, when they have good yolk absorption, they're really thick. And so I just didn't notice it in time. By the time I tried to palpate it, it was too big to work it out. And I actually cut him open after he passed, of course, and looked into it and documented everything so that I could help educate other people and educate myself more, and learn from that mistake as well. And like I said, I don't know if there's anything that I could have done to prevent it at this point. Just the fact that I didn't notice it, even though I have pictures of that baby, I was handling him. He was absolutely fantastic. The first time that I knew something was up, he ate, and then he regurgitated that meal. And at that time, he didn't look very swollen, but within a couple of days, he did. And that's when I noticed it, and that's when I started looking into things that I could do. But I think it was just too late because it was so big and such a big mass that I wasn't able to palpate it out. So that's something that I want to learn from going forward. You know, I don't want to lose animals ever. It is a part of keeping. I see so many keepers, and it tends to be in the ball hobby for whatever reason, that think that snakes, you know, won't ever die unless we make a mistake. And yes, typically we're making some kind of mistake to get to that point, but there's a lot of information that we don't know. And not just new keepers, there's a lot of information that people that have been keeping these animals for 40 or 50 years don't know. We've really just scratched the surface on what there is to know about these animals. And so while you should never just say, oh, there's nothing I can do, and not look into what happened, don't beat yourself up too much. If, you know, everything within your control was done right, try to learn from it. Look for where you could have maybe prevented it or prevent it in the future, because you always want to think about your other animals. If something happens once, it can certainly happen again. And so you want to be prepared as much as you can and ready for anything, really. You know, over the course of keeping, I've kept for 20 years, I've lost some animals. There's some that I have lost that I have no explanation for whatsoever. One that I lost a few years ago, well, it wasn't quite a few years ago, a couple years ago, was Ron Burgundy's sister, Cheyenne. If you had me rank my snakes from 1 to 100, with 1 being the healthiest animal in my collection, she would have been top 5, no doubt about it. She never had a piece of stuck shed in her life. She never refused a meal. She never even made any questionable sounds, no discharge, no nothing. Absolutely perfect, flawless animal. Her growth rate was phenomenal. She came from a big line of bloods, and she was getting big fast with, you know, a nice controlled diet. She was bigger than Ron, and you know, everything was going really great. I actually had a video of her like 2 days before she died. She was fantastic. She had eaten about 5 to 7 days before she passed, so I don't think it was anything food related. But I came home one day and she was belly up and gone. She was in an ambient room with, you know, about 80 other short tails at the time. So obviously it wasn't anything temperature related, because there were short tails that were warmer than where she was. She wasn't on the highest level at all or anything. And like I said, it was ambient, so it's not like, you know, her specific heating element malfunctioned. At the time, I didn't have the money to do a necropsy, which I wish that I had, because that'll really teach you a lot about what happened. Now, it could be some type of cancer. It could have been something growth related internally. You know, like I said, there's a lot of things that we don't know, especially as we keep more and more species and we're working with more and more genetics. There's a lot of stuff going on that we haven't learned yet. You know, I've seen it with people that keep boas. They'll hit sexual maturity and just roll sometimes. And it's not because anybody did a thing keeping them wrong. It's just because sometimes all of a sudden that thing turning on in their body triggers something else to happen, and something that they were living with for years that we didn't know about all of a sudden becomes lethal to them. And things like that do happen. And so, as I've said, you know, several times in this video, you want to learn from that. I don't think it's wise to hide from mistakes. I think, you know, whether it's our mistake or whether it's beyond our control, we need to own up to it and we need to learn from it. And the more you sweep these things under the rug and the more you hide them, the less likely you are to learn. You'll see when I lose something, I reach out to a bunch of people and I talk to them because I want to learn more. I want to prevent it from happening. I want to get to a point where I don't ever lose an animal, which is, you know, ultimately impossible, but it would be nice to get to that point or as close to it as you can. You know, animals like this Orion here, I want him to be around for 30 years, more ideally, but I'd love him to be around at least that long. You know, it's been 4 years now that I've had him since I hatched him out, and he's just a great snake. You can see I didn't even think he was going to sit very long with me, but he's adjusted really well and he's doing great. Since he's about 6 months old, he's been great like this. He was a rough start. He was a little asshole, so was his sisters, so was that whole clutch as babies. But as I've mentioned in other videos with them, it's just giving them time. It's being consistent. It's not pushing them past the point that makes them uncomfortable. You know, flooding just doesn't work for the long term. You might get an animal that way, you know, to tame down that way temporarily or for the most part. But if your only way of taming them is through fear, you're not building a working relationship with them. This snake trusts me because I've never done anything to violate his trust. And it may have taken him a while to realize that, but now he knows that. And so now, no matter what I do, he tolerates it. Does that mean he can never bite me? No. You know, you trigger the right instinct at the right moment, anything is possible. But 99% of the time, as long as I behave according to how I normally do, it's not going to set him off at all. I can hold him, I can move him, you know, I can touch him. It doesn't matter because he's comfortable with me and he's learned that I mean him no harm. So yes, from time to time he'll get squirmy and he wants to get away because he is an independent thinker and he wants to do his own thing. But it's amazing the relationships you can build with these animals, especially considering they're not designed to be social like mammals and birds and things that rely on others to survive. He's not relying on anybody to survive, so it's his choice to accept the fact that he can trust me. And that's always my goal with these animals, is to teach them that they can. But that's not the premise of this video. We're getting off topic. So learn from your mistakes. Learn from other people's mistakes. Don't be so condemning. You know, ask them what happened. Get as much information as you can. Now, a lot of times we see, especially if we're on social media and in groups with a lot of new keepers, a lot of them do kill their animals with ignorance or with other things. But harping on them for that doesn't really help anything. Be constructive about it. You can let them know that, hey, you know, you made some mistakes here you need to fix, but you can be constructive about it. Not everybody's going to handle constructive criticism anyways, and that's on them. That's not your responsibility. As long as you're polite and get your point across, you know, that's fair. If people can't deal with that, fuck them, you know, at that point. We all need to be open to criticism. We all need to be open more, because the thing is, we do have a lot more to learn. And so if we all hide these things and we close these things off, we're not learning anything as a community. The more we share, the more we learn. And so that was really one of the biggest premises why I did this channel to begin with, is I want people to have the opportunity to learn information. So I want to share what I've learned. I want to share what other people have taught me. Got an ant on my leg, there we go. Because I think that's important. And sadly, I know a lot of people in the community will only share information with people who are customers and things of that nature. And yes, I spend more time, you know, helping my customers than I do a total stranger, just because that's part of what you get when you purchase an animal from me. But I do want to help the community as a whole and not just have it be a selfish thing. And not that that's selfish necessarily, just to give your customers more than you give a stranger. I think it's the opposite of selfish. That person's, you know, investing in you and you're investing back in them. So I think that's important. But like I said, to me, I think the hobby grows best when we're all more open and when we all share information and we share our successes and our failures. If you're just sharing your successes, you're really just trying to fluff your own ego at that point. You're not helping anybody. We learn more through failure, unfortunately, than we do through success sometimes. So it's really, really important to share that when we can. So I'm going to cut this short. I've got some other videos to do. I'm going to try to get a couple done today so I don't have to stress about it all week. I might even use Orion for the next video that you'll see, which will be the hanging with our collection, even though I've already been hanging with him for a while. Put him down in the grass and let him cruise a little bit. He's a little bit different than his sister. He's a little bit more apt to cruise and periscope and things. He may not so much now because he's been out for a while. He was periscoping before when I went over and picked him up. But he may again, so we'll see what happens in that video. So stay tuned for more of Orion, and we'll see you guys. Thank you.